Restore Thrive, we're back talking baseball again. Thanks for joining us, guys. Tonight we're going to talk about some green lights and red flags as it relates to your shoulder health and your hip health as a baseball player. So these are things that we can do in the preseason or during spring training as we're getting ourselves ramped up for the season to make sure we have normal ranges of motion in our hip and in our shoulders. Those type of things are critical if we're going to keep ourselves healthy through the season. It's when we start to lose those normal ranges of motion that we start to create abnormal force at our joints. And that's what leads to overuse and breakdown of those joints and of those tissues around the joint. So tonight we're going to talk first about your shoulder, a quick test you can do at home in the mirror or with somebody holding a camera to take a picture of you. So for the thrower, there's two things that are most important. What we call external rotation, the ability to lay that arm back or cock that arm back and get it ready to throw, and then the ability to actually rotate that arm down into that what we call internally rotated position to let go of the ball or create that torque or that velocity to throw. So the first thing we want to see is if we get into a standing position, one, can the player stand with their chest up, the rib cage down? I shouldn't be flared out like this. I also shouldn't be rounded like this. Both of those things are going to affect the mechanics at the shoulder. I want to be organized when my rib cage is over my pelvis, my abs are engaged, my butt is on. I'm going to bring my arm out to the side. First with just my palm up and elbow straight. I should be able to bend my elbow here and at least get my forearm vertical with my trunk at that side view. If I'm short of that and I can't bring my arm back any farther in this direction, then I know I've got a limit in terms of flexibility. We can get a little deeper into what that flexibility limit is in another episode here, but know that if you're short with your forearm here, as you try to externally rotate your arm and you can't get it at least to even with your trunk, you've got a stiff shoulder that needs some work. This is external rotation. Internal rotation, we want to make sure that as the athlete rotates down, that forearm starts to angle down, but the front of the shoulder stays back in the socket. If my shoulder starts to dump forward as I try to bring my arm down towards my side, then I know that I'm trying to compensate by changing the posture at my shoulder and my shoulder blade. That's not true shoulder range of motion. If I'm here in external rotation, this is 90 degrees. When I rotate down, I should have somewhere around 70 degrees. Normal is not having my forearm even with my trunk when I rotate down into this position. Most of us don't have that range of motion, especially if you've played baseball for several years. You're actually going to change the mechanics of the joint. You'll most likely be more lax. You can see with me, I can rotate my arm past 90 here. I've gained more motion because of all the years that I spent playing baseball. But the trade-off for that is that I'm a little more limited in internal rotation. That's about as much as I can get without warming it up a little bit. And that, if I don't warm it up or stretch it out properly, is something that can overload my shoulder. Make sure you have those two ranges of motion. The second one is hip flexibility, and specifically the front of the hip, what we call the hip flexors. When we're throwing, what we want to make sure of is that we're able to fully engage the lower body. And as a thrower, as I'm rotating through my hip, I need to be able to extend to allow that power to come up through my trunk, out through my arm as I start to throw. If I'm short through my hip, what I end up doing is I have to make up for that power loss at my hip by rotating my arm faster. This is one of the big things that we see is overlooked during the rehab process when somebody's injured their elbow or their shoulder as a thrower. That contributes to excess load on the shoulder is just lack of range of motion through the front of the hip. So our test for normal range of motion in the front of the hip is what we call the couch stretch. What I want you to do is find a box, find a wall, use your couch, get into a hands and knees position here, hands under your shoulders, knees under your hips. You're going to put one leg back. Your knee is going to come into contact with the box, the wall, or the couch. You're going to post up on an arm here. You're going to bring your other foot out in front of your body here. Make sure your abs are on and you're squeezing your butt. And you're going to sit straight up. Bring your trunk upright. Your back should be straight, not arched out like this. My rib cage should still be down. My knee should still be up against that support. And I should be able to hang out in this position for 2 minutes without freaking out. If you can't stay in this position for 2 minutes, if it gets too much to hold, then you don't have that normal extensibility or flexibility through the front of the hip. The recommendation to fix that is simply work on that position every night until you can breathe through it for 2 minutes. Give these things a try, guys. Make sure you've got that normal range of motion in your shoulders and in the front of your hip. Let us know what you think. We'll talk to you again soon.